Okay, we should be live streaming now.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming to our very first meeting of 2021. Happy New Year. So happy to have everybody here. And even though we're virtually together, we're together, which I think is particularly fantastic. Before we get started, just want to acknowledge the Greater Victoria School District wishes to recognize and acknowledge the Esquimalt and Songhees nations on whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. And I think it's important that we ground ourselves in the meaning of that, and not just kind of not just say it, but really feel it and understand it and contemplate our connection to place and space. I think it's important that we think about that over time and over our own history. So I think that I'm from the traditional Syilx territory in the Okanagan Valley, and I like to always communicate that as well. So that is that right off the bat. Of course, my name is Ryan Painter. I'm chair of the Ed Policy Committee. And as well, we have with us two other voting members. We have Trustee Nicole Duncan, and we have Trustee Tom Ferris. And joining us as well from operations is Trustee Elaine Leonard. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Trustee Leonard. Great to have you here. And many other wonderful, amazing, smiling faces from staff, student reps, VCC PAC reps. Oh, and Trustee Hens is here as well. Wonderful. We've got folks joining us from ops. That's super fantastic. So yes, just introducing folks really quickly, and we'll jump right into A2 of the agenda, which is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve? That is from Tom. Thank you very much, Tom. Trustee Ferris, all those in favor? Okay, and bear with me as I go through. Thank you very much. And the agenda is approved. And now we will, let me just change my view here. Perfect, that's a little easier. And now we're going to go for approval of the minutes from the December 7th, 2020 Combined Ed Policy Directions Committee and Operations Policy Planning Committee. This meeting was a combined meeting. And so we're going to approve now the minutes from that meeting from December 7th. And I have moved by Tom, thank you. And all those in favor? Thank you, and that is approved. And any business arising from the minutes? Seeing and hearing none, we will go right into, or no, there's no presentations to the committee. New business, introduction of the student representative. I will kick it over to Superintendent Green.
As always, very thrilled to introduce our student representation from our different schools all over Victoria. This month we have Annika Clark, who's here from Vic High. Great to have you here. She let us know that she did polar bear swim over the holiday. That's a bit wild out there, but good for you. And Annika, just know that we're thrilled that you're a part of these meetings. That if you have things that you want to add and say, your voice is always important as representing our students from high school. And you have an opportunity if you want to say hello to any of the people who have attended the meeting.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to learning some cool things about the district tonight. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Annika. And as Superintendent Green said, if at any time you want to hop in, please feel free to put up your hand. We definitely encourage you to participate, ask any questions that you might like to. It's awesome to have you here, and I know I'm really happy to have you at this meeting. We will jump into C2, District Team Update, Inclusive Learning. District Principal Sean McCartney has an amazingly wonderful presentation for us, which is very much looking forward to. So I will jump over to Mr. McCartney. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Ryan, and hi, everybody. Happy New Year. I think I said it early on, but there's some other faces that I haven't had a chance to reconnect with here too, so great to see you all. I'm actually joined by my colleague Pam today, so I'll let Pam say a quick hello too while I get the share going. And give me a thumbs up if you can see the slides. Okay. Awesome. I know there were also copies of these in the pack-up, so whether you're referring to the pack-up or able to go along with the screen. Again, it's myself here and my colleague Pam, and we're here on behalf of the district team to do part of the district team regular updates as part of the Ed Policy meetings. And really as we've said before, and as you all know, our work as a district team is really grounded in operationalizing the new strategic plan. And so we wanted to include the visual of that. And that work is done through the district operational plan, which I know you heard a little bit more of from some of our colleagues, most recently Simon Bergers, as a part of the Modern Languages Update last Ed Policy meeting. What's exciting for us is the clear focus on closing the opportunity and achievement gaps for all learners that is really captured in the work of the new documents. So we're quite excited by the potential of the work ahead for the next 4.5 years under this plan. Hard to believe we're already into 2021. Really, as we continue to support our system to know, understand, learn, and work in increasingly inclusive and culturally responsive ways. Yeah, it's exciting and meaningful work we're embarking on. Our current work is building on what Pam and I feel is pretty strong work that we've accomplished and learned a fair bit from over the past number of years. For us in our department and in the 2 roles that we are in as district principals, it's year 4 in our work and these roles, which really started out as very much kind of separate work for our department over in a bit of a silo, kind of that former special education land, working, envisioning and championing, trying to bring inclusion to the district. And what's really exciting for us is that work of our department has shifted and it's more broadly understood, and what we feel is more commonly embraced as really all of our work. And we see that reflected in the language of the new strategic plan. And we just wanted to really start by saying we see that as something to recognize and celebrate. So we're very excited about that. And to get here, as you heard many times, especially last year, we've been quite explicit and purposeful, hence the graphic here of weaving one strand together. We've really made an explicit commitment the last year plus to weave our work together as a district team, reduce silos, having greater alignment, trying to connect the dots between all of our work. So in our updates tonight and again in March, we will highlight some examples of that alignment that's more specific to the work of our department. And as it said in the memo, so we'll be back again in March, round 2 of Sean and Pam, sharing a little bit more around different areas of our portfolio. But tonight we wanted to use the graphic that we've shared in the past around how we see all of our work across the district connecting and wrapping around what we know is the core of every student, every teacher, and every family being connected, and that is the core of our work. And really, we're trying to summarize some of the highlights and updates for you tonight under these 4 key areas. So there's a slide that will expand and elaborate a little bit on each, and Pam and I will share a couple each. So as many of you know, one of the first significant projects we shared just over 2 years ago now, I think, when we brought the Inclusion for Learning strategy. What's exciting in this update as a part of this is that we've made some pretty significant progress in moving forward. So for those that aren't aware, this was the strategy, board-approved strategy to try to create some equity around an infrastructure component. So creating, recreating, and trying to get all of our schools to a place that we felt was at least a minimum standard of professional spaces and sensory spaces required to try to truly deliver on the vision of inclusion and fluid and flexible spaces to support all students. So the exciting news is that we're making really good progress to getting all schools into the green zone, which was, we have those schools at that place. Current focus is wrapping up a handful of elementary and middle schools, and then kind of revisiting the notion of what space for all means in a secondary setting. It's a bit different than an elementary and middle school setting, and we haven't really embarked on that work with our secondary schools up until this point. What's been interesting is that COVID has really helped us rethink the use of space in many of our schools. And so it's an interesting timing to have an opportunity to revisit this conversation with our secondary schools. In addition, now that we are in a better place in terms of infrastructure and less of a pinchy space around space in some of our schools, we're looking at connecting to that professional learning. We know it's one thing to create spaces, it's another thing to meaningfully use space in appropriate ways to support all students and their learning. And so you'll hear a little bit more about how that connects through some of our professional learning plans on a follow-up slide. In addition, under infrastructure, early last year, fall of 2019-2020 school year, we launched a new website as that kind of single repository. And it's been a great backbone for, stronger communication, the place where we house, the documents we share, newsletters, and then during COVID times, especially when strong communication became really important, Zoom meetings, archives of the meetings and the slides and the handouts that have been happening through our department. So that's been a great addition as an infrastructure component. And again, a place where we overlap that work. So for example, the work of the Modern Languages team and our team in terms of supporting school-based team members across ELL, learning support, counseling, et cetera. Work alongside Indigenous Education Department during COVID times, especially as we worked on guiding documents around maintaining connection with students and families, re-engaging some of our more vulnerable learners and students, especially at the beginning of this school year. So again, that infrastructure as a communication hub has been a positive step forward. Something less glamorous, but that's kind of exciting that we're also celebrating has been some hard work over the last year and a bit with some of the support of Andy and his team in terms of moving out of a paper-based world and into a more online place in terms of our infrastructure. So we have developed an online referral process, and all of the requests, referral request, designation requests that formed a lot of the work of our department is now streamlined. We've reduced redundancies, removed redundancies, reduced our reliance on paper, come up with a pretty efficient and effective process and a more reliable source in terms of data, et cetera. So it's been valuable as well. On to professional learning. Last year, one of the main focus areas we have been working towards for a number of years is working directly with what we call our school-based teams. So that's our administrators, our non-enrolling teachers, so learning support teachers, counselors, English language learning teachers, and again, trying to, instead of working with different groups in silos, trying to have all of that work aligned with a common purpose. And so we know that the core of our work is around every student being successful, and the connection between assessment and planning and programming for a classroom and for individual learners is really critical. And so last year we worked with our team of district learning support teachers and psychologists primarily to come up with a bit of a series and a framework. We delivered that over a 3-part series pre-COVID, and luckily we got through the series with everyone in person, face-to-face. And then when COVID happened and we started to all shift into different ways of doing work, we were able to free up some of our folks to focus on turning the content of that work into a website. So we've launched the CAP website, which is really just a repository, but it's the holding place for the content. So the idea is building that framework, getting everybody connected to that common language, common understanding, of supporting individual students and supporting whole classrooms within pretty solid, robust instructional planning for the full range of learners that we can anticipate in all of our classrooms. It's been a big collaborative effort with lots of input across our district team and all the various departments, Indigenous Ed, Modern Languages, Literacy and Numeracy teams from the learning team in the past years, ELL, French immersion, gifted educators, itinerants such as our speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, physiotherapists. So a real collaborative effort in terms of everybody being a part of curating content and awareness and ownership of where we're moving with leading this work and moving forward with people's confidence and competence to deliver on connecting assessment to planning and programming for all kids. Right now, we're looking at how we design and offer all the different entry points for school-based team and school staffs moving forward. One of those is the last bullet. So I'm jumping down to the last bullet, the Competency-Based Iep Pilot. So in terms of the work happening in the province and really internationally, we're lucky in that we have one of the thinking leaders in Shelley Moore, who is in our province, and she launched a series of webinars this year. The work is actually multiple years in the making with the Ministry of Education around shifting thinking and all of our work being focused on really how do we bring potential for all students, student voice into the whole process. And so for some of our most diverse learners, rethinking that approach to an individualized education plan, how do we incorporate student voice? How do we use the new curriculum, specifically the core competencies and the curricular competencies, to really co-design a meaningful plan that a student is contributing to, owning, and wanting to move forward on their path to future success. That's a lot of work to rethink where we were, to where we are, to where we hope to go. So we've supported 2 families of schools, again, a cross-district team initiative, using the webinars from Shelley Moore and many other guests. So we're supporting school teams across the Lansdowne and Monterey families of schools, specifically elementary and middle, as well as all of the support staff and itinerants attached to those schools. So classroom teachers, school-based team members, administrators, and some of our district team staff. And it's been really powerful, and another connection back to connecting assessment to planning and programming. So as you can see, a lot of the work is dovetailing together, so everything's aligned and focused and moving us in one common direction. And the other professional learning update we wanted to celebrate and share is pretty exciting, and I'll kick it over to Pam in a moment, but a 6-part paid after school series that launches very soon here. And as of just before winter break, we had 144 of our EAs registered for this professional learning opportunity, which is super exciting. So Pam, I'll let you jump in there and take it over.
Thanks, Sean. Yes, this will be a learning opportunity.
Oh, sorry, Pam, just one sec. Can we make sure everyone goes on mute while Pam's speaking? Thank you.
Thank you. This will be a 6-part, very much interactive virtual learning opportunity. And as Sean said, we're really pleased at the uptake from our EAs across the district. And I think this is a great start to this. It actually starts in a couple of weeks. The sessions will be after school. People will be paid, as Sean mentioned, and there will be a focus on strength-based language and IEPs, reframing behavior. How do we support students who exhibit that kind of complex behavior? Building resiliency will be one of our topics, moving towards independence. And we're also, again, this is something certainly being planned across the department or across the district. And so we have staff from many different areas that are working collaboratively to put on these sessions. And we anticipate and we hope that this will become an annual thing, and we will continue to build on it. So we're quite excited about this learning opportunity that is about to start. And maybe, Sean, if you can flip the slide. One of the other big pieces is really looking at those effective student supports. And so a couple of things, 3 things we wanted to really highlight today, and Sean's already spoken a little bit to it. This idea of how do we have increased collaboration, and how do we find places for all of our colleagues to be involved in this work and supporting all of our students. And I think this has been a real area of growth. And I just want to give a shout out. I know our colleague Lindsay Johnson is on the call tonight, and we've done some great work with our Pathways and Partners and Pathways. I always get it confused, Lindsay, my apologies. But that idea about how do we create some of those workplace learning opportunities for students with really more complex learning needs. And so that's been a really collaborative piece of work we've done together as a district team. We've also really started to reach out as a district team to collaborate with other community partners. And for example, we will be starting, actually as of this week, to start to meet with community partners, so the Native Friendship centers, in terms of who are those little ones that are coming into school in the fall that we now need to be supporting them and their families to have a successful transition. And so we really look forward to having those opportunities to collaborate and really work closely with community partners. Another really big piece of work, I think, is with our itinerants. And the Quadra warehouse coming on board, where we could have all of our itinerant staff housed for the most part, has been such a success on so many levels. But one of those being the ability to bring that group together as a team, the ability to have those opportunities to meet around students or around schools or around how do we support families to problem solve together, has really, again, increased that collaboration. And so that's been a great step forward that Sean and I have been really pleased to see that growing, and we know it will only continue to grow. It's also been a really good, I'd say, a couple of years that we've been, again, very intentional in reaching out to our partners at QA and other VHA partners to say, how do we have more regular meetings with you? How do we have common professional learning opportunities with your staff and our staff? And again, that continues to grow, all with that idea about how do we really make sure we've got the most effective supports for our students. Another piece of work that we started last year and continue to work a little bit more formally on, I would say, is really having a complex team in a Tier 3 referral process. And certainly what we've heard and what we know is that supports for students with complex needs and for students who maybe exhibit complex behaviors is something we really need to put a focus on. And so we are doing that in the district in a number of different ways. And so one of the things we have done is we really looked at our staffing contingent and looked at people's strengths and their passions and where their heart really lies, and started to sort of say, can we have some people who are really focused on that small number of students who we would say are in a Tier 3 support kind of need area? And how do we have those people wrap around? What does that look like? And so one of the things we were able to do starting this year was provide some additional SLP support and psychologist support, as well as some behavior analyst support to work with us as a team to really identify those students and those families and those schools where we need to have more intensive supports in place. And so that work is underway. We're at the beginning stages and we continue to learn as we go, but that's something we're quite excited to see as an option across the district. And then the other thing is really looking at how do we expand the professional learning opportunities, again, that will support all of our staff in working with students with complex needs. And so this year, we've really taken a broader look. So we continue to work very closely with our provincial resource partners like PopArd and PopFast, and they've got some great learning opportunities that we've been able to use. And particularly, again, I guess the blessing of COVID is because travel is not involved. It's much easier for us to bring people in virtually and for people to go out virtually, if you will, to engage in those learning opportunities. So that's been a great thing. We've also done some work this year, and we'll continue to do work with Dr. Megan Smith from the Center for ADH Awareness across Canada, based out of Toronto. And so we've brought her in a couple times to connect with staff, another great resource that we will continue to use, as well as Dr. Julie Costin, who we've used certainly in the district before, but again, really looking at some of the virtual learning opportunities that she's got and how do we use those. So those things continue to grow, and as well as really that continuing of programming options. We know we need to have that ability for students to be in their catchment school, to perhaps be in a specific site at a school, so Arbutus or Reynolds, and or a site like Victor. We know there has to be that range of supports. And so we've continued to support that this year, and continue to focus more intentionally on it. And Sean mentioned that connection between assessment, planning, and programming. And we're really working closely with the staff in all three of those sites to say, what does it look like to really support students who need something different or need something more? And also, again, I think a blessing of COVID is we've learned a little bit more about having hybrid opportunities and about having kids do some things in school and some things remotely. And so I think that's, again, another great learning that we'll be able to use as we go forward. And then I wanted to also speak again about another collaborative opportunity, working with our secondary district team on starting to look at enhancing the school-based team effectiveness in schools. And so that work is going to start in a couple of weeks with our secondary schools, and really to start to review our practices around school-based teams, to leverage the strengths and the learnings from schools, to create some tools or some templates or some processes that we can be starting to then use across the district. And one of the reasons for this is really looking through that equity lens. How do we support equity across all of our schools and for all of our staff? And I think it will really help us to look at what evidence-informed practices are we really using as a district and promoting. And then over to the next slide.
Whoop.
Great, thanks, Sean. Another big area that we're focused on is homeschool partnerships. And I think I saw Christine on the call. So hi, Christine. We're quite excited to be working with our parent partners. And so BC PAC Ed Access, or BC Ed Access, to really start to put together some more robust tools to help parents and caregivers navigate the education system, particularly when they're looking for supports for their child. And so again, we are working closely with our parent partners to develop some materials. So one of those things is improving our own website, and how do we help people navigate through? What supports can I find at my school? What supports are at the district level? What's the relationship between those? How does that work? And then the other piece is creating an actual guide, paper and or online, that we could be using with parents. And that again will help all of us to get on the same page, have the same language, and make sure we have the information that's really available. And so we look forward to doing that in the coming months. And then we also have decided we are going to meet on a fairly regular basis and have a really proactive partnership. So again, something we're quite excited about. And along with creating the communication information, we also really want to focus on some strategies for parent engagement. So how do we really truly work with parents as partners? And what does that look like? And what can we be sharing out about that information? And so those are all pieces that are that will come to life. And maybe when we come back in March, we'll be able to speak a little bit more to some of those. We will see. And then I think Back to the slide that Sean shared at the beginning, that idea of braiding the cedar together to create a stronger container. And we know that when we do this work in partnership, that when we collaborate, we do create a stronger container that's really going to hold our students and our families and our teachers safely, so that we can really wrap around and provide those supports that are needed as a district team. And so this is an image that I think both Sean and I kind of keep near and dear in terms of how are we doing that for students and families and for our staff. So that's sort of the end of our presentation. And I think we're certainly open to taking questions. Ryan, I guess it's probably back to you for that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Pam and Sean. Oh my goodness. I have to tell you, I love the cedar wrap, the container piece, like that jibes with me. Really, what an amazing report. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over now to the team for questions. But before I do, I did forget to mention that there is an email for those watching. If you do want to submit questions, you can send the email to question.sd61.bc.ca. And if we have any questions, we will go to those at the end of the committee meeting. I will turn it over now to the team. And I believe I saw Trustee Ferris and then Trustee Duncan, and then we'll go over to Christine Payne. So Trustee Ferris, go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate this presentation. It's been incredibly informative, and you obviously have done a lot of work. I just quickly wanted to ask a couple of things. The IEP pilot that you're doing in 2 different families, is this a work in progress, or is it just a planning? I mean, in other words, do you actually have students involved in IEP development?
Yeah, it's a good question, Tom. And it's actually, I mean, we've had, I guess, best practice considerations in pockets. We've had students involved in IEP planning for a while in best kept secret pockets. What's exciting is we're moving in a direction where it's becoming the norm, and the ministry is supporting a shift right the way through My Education BC with an infrastructure that we're planning to move to in the near future. So yeah, it's already an implementation within those schools. And I was excited to hear from one learning support teacher at Lansdowne who shared in one of our virtual learning support meetings about these powerful conversations with some of their most reluctant, disengaged learners who up until this time have really been disengaged and not present and not connected. And just these, couple of sessions hanging out and chatting about who they are, where they want to go, what they're excited about, again, has really personalized and shifted, and they're seeing that really shift. So yeah, it's pretty cool stuff.
Well, that's exciting. I have a million questions, but I won't ask them all. I did want to ask with regard to the professional learning for EAs, whether there was any teacher involvement in that. One of the hurdles for EAs is actually making the connection with teachers in order that they can be effective in the classroom. And so I wondered how that sort of issue was being dealt with.
That's a really great question. So a couple of things to answer that. So first of all, in the development of all of the modules, there are 6 modules. So they've been developed by a teacher along with district staff. So we've had that kind of teacher lens in there as well. And then Tom, I think your idea about how do we have that learning where teachers and EAs are coming together is something that we have continued to say, how do we now take these EA modules and how do we start to build that out so that we are having those opportunities that teachers are involved? How are we sharing the information that we are presenting? And so that is something we are now discussing kind of behind the scenes. And hopefully when we revisit this and we go into round 2 of it, I think we would really love to have it as that partnership that you're coming to these sessions as the teacher and as the EA, and how could we do that in a more effective way, given you know, some of the constraints of having teachers and EAs both out of their schools in the learning opportunities. But I think that the sky's the limit truly once we've got the content developed and we get some feedback on it, then how do we continue to move that forward and involve teachers?
Wonderful. Thank you, Trustee Ferris. Trustee Duncan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much for updating us on all the very busy and well, broad-based work that you've been doing over the last year or so. Certainly, it sounds like there's some very exciting things on the horizon. I did have a couple of questions. I guess first, building on what Trustee Ferris asked around the opportunity through Pro-D for EAs and teaching staff to collaborate. I actually was thinking back to, oh gosh, it's been a couple of years now, when we first started to hear, as one of a few new trustees around the board table, about the challenges that EAs were facing in terms of being part of some of that school-based planning when it comes to the students that they also are supporting. And we heard about the concern that EAs were not able to take the time to participate as fully in the planning around classroom supports for those students they support as well. I'm wondering whether or not that's something that the team has had an opportunity to look at when you're, you know, over the last couple of years, and if you've made any progress in addressing that particular concern.
Sure. I think there's a couple of things I can speak to on that, Nicole, is that one of the things, certainly through the work we're going to do with secondary schools around school-based teams, is really to look at who are you having in the conversation? So students, EAs, parents, what does all of that look like? How do we involve those folks in those planning conversations? How do we make that happen within the school day or within that time? And we know that some schools do a fabulous job of that. So again, how do we learn from those schools where that is happening and leverage that across the district and say, you know, if you were able to do it, can we learn from that? And then your colleagues in another school could maybe learn from that. So I think that's one of those things that we really want to focus on. And part of, again, back to the curriculum-based IEP is, again, how do we involve, who are we involving, and how do we involve people in that IEP conversation? So it will also be coming up there. And then through the learning series for EAs, certainly one of the topics that will be covered is, what is your role? How do you have that role? What could that look like? How are ways to get into the conversation if you don't feel you're part of the conversation? So we're trying to address it on multiple fronts. Still there's work ahead, but it is certainly something that we are working towards.
That's great. Thank you so much. My other question was around this online referral process. I'm interested to hear a little bit more, if you don't mind, around the types of reports that are available through that referral tool, for lack of a better way to describe it. But in particular, I'm thinking, is there an opportunity for us to get a sense of how many requests are in the system, how quickly requests are being processed? Is there an opportunity to prioritize urgent requests? So I'm wondering if you could give us a little bit more information about how that tool functions and what kind of reporting opportunities there might be.
Yeah, in terms of reporting, I think the higher level stats for, numbers of referrals, et cetera, in terms of, yeah, it's a good question. We haven't really gone as deep as, we haven't launched it officially with schools. So we've used it internally, and we'll be piloting it this spring to launch full wide with school-based teams next fall. One of the things we're wondering is, how do we look at stats and data, because it's going to have an accessible piece. Internally, we've discussed looking at, basically it's an efficiency piece, and then there's caseload management built into it, which we do individually as with our professionals. And so your question about prioritization is typically handled individually with each itinerant member. And I mean, Jeanette can speak a little bit to that because I know she's sitting there and using the app. In terms of, it would be an interesting question to vet. It's a good question that we could probably take away and look into a little further around what kind of data the app might be able to provide.
Thanks.
At the moment, we haven't really discussed using it in some of the ways you were describing.
Yeah, okay, no, that's interesting. I find it really interesting, all of the different initiatives that you've got going, and clearly you're very busy. It's just what came to mind as I was listening to all of the good work you're doing. But thank you for that. I appreciate it's in the early stages, and I look forward to hearing more about how it's developed.
Thanks, Trustee Duncan. And yeah, I have no doubt that we're going to hear a lot more because it sounds like a fascinating way of digging into the numbers. We're going to go to Christine next, and then I got Trustee Leonard on deck.
Hi there. Thank you very much for all your explanations of what's going on. As you indicated, we've met earlier, and we were happy with some of the developments that we heard. Just going on what you've said tonight, I wonder if you can clarify the ministry being involved with the IEP process. And you said you're doing a trial process. What, 2 families in school? One of them is the Lantone family. If you could tell us what the other one is. What your long-term vision, and sorry, is that just a trial, or will it be with the ministry? Does the ministry have a goal for you to implement this across all schools next year, let's say, or 2 years down the line? So if you could just clarify what their expectations are of that. My concern also with IEPs, any change to IEPs to make the student more or make the student responsible for their learning is nothing we want to see. It's that is their learning is guided by and developed by what they get from their teachers and staff, and so we don't want to see. We know some IEPs are going that way, and we don't want to see that. A couple things also for the guidebook. I don't know what the district does for translation materials, but would the guidebook or online be available in other languages? And I have, what was the other thing? Oh yeah, just also getting, I wanted an example of how you're enhancing the secondary school process. If you could give me a couple examples of how that's going along, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
I can do a brief follow-up to the IEP question, but I think, again, it's a deep, broad conversation that could probably be a standalone meeting. So the ministry involvement, again, it's supported and promoted in terms of best practice. The ministry has not mandated that any districts must shift by a certain timeline. I think what's in place is, from a ministry perspective, the MyEd BC infrastructure, which is the student information system, has functionality to use the current look and feel of IEPs, as well as a competency-based IEP, which is something that Vancouver School District with Shelley Moore and the ministry kind of developed and co-designed. So we're not at a place where it's been made mandated or accountable, and there might be a yet there. So we're maybe a little bit ahead of that curve in terms of exploring it, but there's plenty of districts across the province that are moving in this direction. So nothing formal in the sense of ministry accountability or mandated or anything like that. Our timeline and intent is probably most realistic would be that we would hope to do the work with the pilot and then figure out some training materials and supporting documents and make the shift to encourage teams to move in this direction for next school year. But that's the absolute earliest we would do that as a district.
Yeah, and then Christine, I think your idea about translating the guidebook into other languages is a great one. I think we're going to have to explore that as we go forward. What do and how can we provide that information to families whose English may not be their first language. So something for us to consider. And in terms of the secondary question, the work that I was speaking to is really enhancing the effectiveness of our school-based teams at the secondary level. So we know that every part of the work that happens across the province in every school is school-based teams that come together to make decisions around planning and programming and supports and all those kinds of things, referrals for students when things are needed. And so we really, again, it's an opportunity to we're starting with our secondary schools. It's a small group of schools to really look at what is working, what are we doing really well. We know there's certainly lots of information on there out in the world about what makes a really good team. How do we make sure we're really focused on supporting students and supporting teachers and supporting families? And so that's really a part of our work, is what can we learn? What can we move forward with? And then what can we start to say to schools, you know, here's what this group of schools is doing. Here's some really good practice. So again, looking at research, looking at evidence and saying, what could we be doing to become even more effective? So enhancing what's already happening. We've got some great, I think Sean used it earlier, we've got some great pockets of excellence, but they're kind of they're secrets almost. And so it's how do we start to leverage those across the system so that, again, equity for kids, equity for staff, equity for families, that's a big push of that work.
Wonderful, thank you. I've got Trustee Leonard and then Trustee Whitaker on deck.
Thank you. I'm happy to see the online referral process coming on track in the future. I was just curious if you knew if we currently had a wait list for designation requests or a backlog.
For designation requests, no, we process those monthly now. It's a part of our ongoing process and structure. So we're, in terms of designation requests, everything is, yeah, all of our referrals come in and are processed quickly. Yeah.
Okay, great, because in past years, many years ago, we had a huge backlog and I was just wanting to make sure that we were on top of it these days. So great to hear, thank you.
And before we go to Trustee Whitaker, I'm just going to jump to Deputy Superintendent Whitten. I know she just wanted to jump in with a quick point of clarification. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Trustee Painter. So I just wanted to take a moment and reiterate that Pam and Sean are coming back in March and may go into a little bit more detail in the programming options. So I know that in the past, we've spoken at Ed Policy about the process for parents and staff and students to move through into a continuum of programming options like Victor, like Arbutus or Reynolds. So we will be sharing more information and more specific timelines on that at the next Ed Policy meeting. So I didn't want that to go unsaid.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Whitten. Appreciate it, and I know we'll look forward to the team coming back. So we've got Trustee Whitaker, and then we'll go back to Trustee Duncan.
Thank you, and thank you both very much for your presentation. And if you don't have an answer, you can always come back in March and answer me. But what I'm interested in is how our IEPs in secondary school are supporting our students in transitioning out of the public education system and into their life, and knowing that students often, well, I think in the past, how 10 years ago, watching videos of students saying that, I really want to learn this, oh, but you have to learn this, and being very upset, and then that's the disengaged student and they're dropping out. But I really think it's our responsibility for this population that we're supporting them to find gainful employment and a place in society. So I'm hopeful that maybe you can give me something now, or your next report will help sort of show that piece where they're moving to. Does that help?
Sorry about that. I did. Absolutely. I think we would totally agree that how do we ensure the goals that we're working on in secondary are really those, those lifelong goals. Not that they aren't all the way through, but certainly when we get into secondary school, we really do want to have that long view of how are we supporting students, what does that look like, and all of those things. So I know that will come up through the school-based team conversations at secondary and through some of the other ongoing work. And so maybe we could bring that back later when we come. That would be great. Thank you.
Thumbs up from Trustee Whitaker. Love it. We will go to Trustee Duncan next.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask one more question. I do have all sorts of questions, but I appreciate we don't have time to just talk about this tonight, although it's very interesting what you're up to. But I wanted to just circle back to the infrastructure slide. So I think it was on page 15 of the pack-up. And I just want to clarify my understanding, Sean, of what you were saying around infrastructure. The first bullet, it says inclusive learning strategy, 70% complete elementary, middle, and so 2021, the focus will be on secondary schools. My understanding of that bullet was that secondary schools are primarily where we still have some outstanding inclusive learning infrastructure needs, and so that will be the priority in 2021. And with that in mind, I see you shaking yes, your head yes, thank you. So do we have assigned budget to address what the team has identified as the needs in that area? Yes. Oh, that's great. I'm so happy to hear that. Wonderful.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Yes, thanks to the initial budget that was approved, the capital budget has continued to carry forward within the amount that we had targeted. So yes.
Super news. Wonderful. And thanks for the question, Trustee Duncan. Any other questions? If not, I just want to personally thank Sean and Pam for the wonderful presentation. Obviously, you saw with the questions that were asked, it's a very engaging topic. We look forward to having you back in March. I know that will be an eagerly anticipated report as well. And so we will see both of you then. But for now, thank you so much for this. Really appreciate it. So now we are going to jump into C3, Board Authority Authorized Courses, District Vice Principal John Hamlin. And I'm not sure if I see John here.
Hi, I'm here for John.
Oh, hi, Lindsay. Sorry
Hey,
about that.
that's okay.
Yes, Lindsay, go right ahead. We are flying the friendly skies with you in aviation maintenance. Well, there's my pun for the night.
Very good. So I'm assuming that the BAW was in the pack up for all of you to take a look at. This BAW was created actually out of some exciting news. For years that our aviation program has run, our program teacher, John Sumner, has been on the hunt for an aircraft. And he really, not to fly, I like to just clarify that. Kim Morris ran into my office one day going, please tell me the students are not working on this and then flying it. So they are not flying this aircraft, but what they are doing is getting their hands on an actual aircraft to be working on it. So learning the structures and understanding, you know, this is a problem, this is how we fix it. So that's why John Sumner wrote this Aviation Maintenance 12 BAW for our aviation program, which also came out of a little bit of a need in these COVID times where our typical work experience course isn't able to happen this year. Places like Viking Air, Vancouver Island Helicopter aren't able to bring students to their places of work at this point. So to fill those hours, we now have an aircraft that's been donated to us. That was the need for the Aviation Maintenance 12 BAW that's in front of you today.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. And you know, given the history of aviation on the South Island, I think it's well placed to have that. I think that's lovely. Any questions? I see Trustee Leonard. Go ahead.
Where is this plane located?
Good question. Our aviation program is based out of Mount Doug Secondary School. So the aircraft needs to be altered a little bit. So the wings are going to have to be cut off slightly and it will be kept in a sea can on the property.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Leonard. Any other questions from those trustees or others who have aviation questions? And not just total aviation questions, but maintenance questions. Yes, Christine, go ahead.
I just noticed in the shop report from the combined meeting in December that Mount Doug, the aviation shop, I don't know what it's called, sorry, is lacking in a few areas. And I'm just wondering if those will be updated for the once the plane is here and being worked on.
Yep, so we're working through that process with facilities and with our senior leadership. So it is included in those shop upgrades. So the plan that's in place will include that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Trustee Whitaker.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing this forward. I'm excited for this. I am curious as to what type of plane was donated.
It's a Cessna, so it's a two-seater Cessna. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Come take a look at it, Anne. You can do some riveting and come check it out.
No, absolutely. I'd love my girls to do it. But anyway.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Trustee Whitaker. And if there are no other questions, just thank you, Lindsay, for being here, and send our thanks to John as well for bringing this up, and to Mr. Sumner too. It sounds really exciting, and I don't know much about airplanes, but working on them seems like it's a lot of fun. Oh, I see we've got Superintendent Green. Yes, go ahead.
Just a question, Colin, do we need to put a motion forward around the ball course to be accepted by the Board of Trustees to go to the board meeting on the end of the month?
Yes, please. And if I could propose that the Board of Education of School District 61, Greater Victoria, approve the new board authority authorised course, Aviation Maintenance 12.
Okay, there's a recommended motion. Do I have a mover from either? Yeah, thank you, Trustee Ferris. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion. Oh, Trustee Duncan, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hearing that some of the health and safety concerns at the particular site where the course will be offered are being addressed, then I think that this is a fantastic opportunity for our students, and certainly support on the basis of that the motion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Trustee Duncan. And seeing no other speakers, I will call the question. All those in favor? And it is unanimous. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you for tossing that motion in there. That's great that we had it. Now we are moving into D, notice of motions. We have none. E, general announcements. We have none. Or we have any questions that came in? Seeing none, I see Trustee Duncan has her hands up. Yeah, no, I got you. I got you. Go ahead, Trustee Duncan.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. Before I forget, I don't know if really this is the right place to raise it, but Trustee McNally, although she did send her regrets, she did email us, and she did just want to raise a question, which I think we might want to just share so that the team can have it in mind for the March report on inclusive learning. She just specifically wanted to get an update on, she says, the present and future of Victor, Reynolds, and Arbutus, and the process for assessing those programs. So I just wanted to share that so that you have that in mind for March. Thanks.
Thank you, Trustee Duncan. Yeah, the email has been shared with the team. I am not sure if Superintendent Green wants to speak further to that, but yeah, the email has been shared, and I know Deputy Superintendent Whitten also spoke to that during our meeting. But go ahead, Superintendent Green.
I was just going to say the exact same thing, that Deputy Superintendent spoke that it was coming up in the next meeting, and that it's already in the planning piece, and so it speaks to what Trustee McNally wanted to bring forward.
Perfect. Okay. Okay, we're in general announcements, but go ahead, Christine. Yeah, we'll consider this a general announcement. Go ahead. You're on mute, Christine. Sorry.
Yeah, unmute.
You're on mute, Christine. Sorry.
Sorry, just in terms of the agenda, your title as chairperson is great, but if you could put your first and last name down, because of the obvious confusion between the two trustees with the sort of last names.
Of course, we will update that.
Yeah, that would be great.
We'll update that for the next pack up. Thank you. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved by Trustee Duncan. Thank you. And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for a wonderful meeting. First meeting of the year. Have a super, super, super rest of your week, and we will see everybody very soon. All the best. Thank you.